After weathering a storm of lightning, thunder, wind, and rain, it is time for us to weather yet another one a bit more personal. Black Crown Initiate and their sophomore album, Selves, We Cannot Forgive. This is a personal storm considering whenever their debut came out a couple of years ago, it definitely gave a lot of people hope that there was a brand new band on the block that was going to produce fruitful and bountiful heavy metal fruit for quite a long time. That these guys were going to quickly ascend the ranks as one of the elite within their genre. What that really is very much a hybrid of many different things. There's a little bit of death metal, a little bit of progressive, there's a little bit of kind of a gothic or depressive tone to it, similar to a Catatonia. There's a lot of different factors that really make up this band, and it's best really described by some of the contemporaries that some of their work will remind you of. So let's dive right in and see if Selves We Cannot Forgive will really hold a candle to what their debut was able to give us a couple of years ago. So the very first cut that you get off of this album is nearly 7 minutes in length, entitled For Red Cloud. Now, the first couple of minutes really paints this band as one that has a very direct approach, but may not seem like they're anything all of that special. However, as this composition continues to flow onward, and you especially get to some of the deeper moments that are really involved within this cut, you start to realize some of the bands that this is starting to remind you of. Groups such as The Faceless, perhaps a little bit of Obscura, or even some Cynic in there. The minor progression is there in order to give the overall composition a nice little pace to it, and then all of the additives that circle around it that really make the core almost spices of their sound gives it such a nice little unique touch that even if this band does have some contemporaries that are easy to recycle their names, this band still feels like they have individually the tools that are required to maintain themselves. Going into Sorrow Psalm, this is probably the second catchiest track on the album. It's one that has a very powerful chorus, and the clean vocals on this definitely give you just chills whenever you listen to them. It's one that has a little direct pace. It's one that's a little bit shorter in length, but not by much, only by about 18 seconds from For Red Cloud. But then whenever you go into Again, you get into what easily is probably the most catchy song on this album. If you don't think that this style of heavy metal has the ability to potentially spawn a catchy moment, take a listen to this cut and you'll probably be proven a little bit wrong. And I like the fact that this chorus is very dynamic. I like the fact that it does have a little bit of a friendly register to it that sort of sticks within your mind. Myself personally, the overall just sort of structure and the way in which the chorus of Sorrow Psalm really bears more memory for me. But then again, I'm not like a lot of other people. I'm weird, whatever. Then you get into Belie the Machine, which is the longest cut on this album at nearly 9 minutes. In fact, it's just a second off, so you might as well just round up. And this is where you get the really adequate mix of everything that this band offers. But also, this is where you start to sense some of the comparisons and the differences between their debut and this album. See, Black Crown Initiate could have been a band that opted to really just recycle what they did on their first disc, considering it did get them some acclaim. It got them favor within the heavy metal community. But instead, this band opted to go a little bit deeper. They opted to actually run a little risky and toss a couple of extra things within their sound, really amplify the overall level that they have, really within their grasp, and, really search and, try to find something brand new about themselves. Belie the Machine, with that combined effort, showcases that power of those deep and darkened vocals, but it also showcases the ethereal nature of its cleans. It's also a song that is very well composed. It's definitely a flow that makes this 9-minute track not feel that way at all. It feels very much on par with the 3 tracks that you heard before it. So you almost think that it's only been about 5 to 6 minutes, or maybe 6.5 at the maximum, but you've actually spent 2.5 additional minutes on this mammoth of a cut, and it's definitely one I recommend. The title track, moving into Transmit to Disconnect, starts to showcase a couple of other brand new influences. Some of the ways these compositions turn and bend, those softer moments that are interspersed within that heaviness. Something that was sort of, thrown in some random locations in the first four, this is now starting to get a little bit of structure behind it and starting to also remind you of Catatonia. It's starting to remind you a little bit of Obeth. Some of the riffing and some of the way in which these transitions really hit also give you that Opethian smile, almost as though you're coming out of a track off of maybe Heritage and then immediately moving forward into something that's harder edged from the group, perhaps from albums such as Ghost Reveries. But then moving forward to Matriarch, which is the 7.5-minute long pre-finale song, it definitely, once again, like Belie the Machine, combines a lot of those efforts and once again gives you many things to really be happy about. I love the way that some of these compositions will crawl, how they're unafraid to go from that soft moment. They're not afraid to use those clean vocals and employ them more than perhaps you would hear on a traditional album of this variety. They are not afraid to let their compositions kind of take off and go wherever they want them to go in order to produce the best sounding, but also the most unique style of composition. It's something that is Black Crown Initiate's strength, and it's also something that's going to carry over for them very, very well if they maintain this path. It keeps them a band of high interest. Vicious Lives is probably another reason why they'll have some longitude. It's because of this very strange 4.5-minute long cut. It's mainly clean. This is not one that really decides to dial up the register all of that much. It instead opts to maintain itself. It has this sort of sorrowful mourn, a dirge almost to it. Definitely has a Catatonia vibe to it in some ways, or at least in its compositional vibe. And based off of that being the final cut, it almost leaves you with this sort of tragic ending, and this almost tragedy-laced feel to it. And based off of that, you leave this album very changed. You leave very, very moved, and that's a strong positive. There are a couple of minor things that could potentially stymie a fan. Some of these compositions will start to, run together a little bit. Some of the ways in which they're constructed, especially on the second half, feel a little bit predictable. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, in reality, all that means is that you're starting to get in tune with BCI's real way of, their pattern of thought. And you have to remember also, this is only their sophomore album. The way in which the songwriting has really progressed between this album and their first is certainly one to be marveled at. And it's definitely something that's going to give them a nice, bright future. Overall, by comparison, the debut may still go down as the more impressive album, only because it sort of came out of nowhere and was this darling whenever it was released. But the second album, I think, has the stronger songwriting and also just really feels like a more complete disc. The band is maturing already, only 2 albums in, and for that reason, it is well worth the 89 out of 100 that it's receiving. This disc is very, very, very smooth to listen to. The flow of this disc certainly carries it well, and because of that, it's one that you're going to want to return to over and over again. That smoothness, that overall feeling that you gain from this disc makes it very easy to pop back on. But I want to know what you guys think about Selves We Cannot Forgive by Black Crown Initiate, which I just called BCI, like it's some sort of weird medical term. Maybe it's still the hangover effect from being hospitalized over the weekend, or maybe I just like acronyms. No one really knows, but you can speculate in the comments while you also tell me what you thought of this disc. I'm CoverkillernNation, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.